So there's a well-known poem that I think a lot of Christians encounter at some point called Footsteps, where the footsteps in the sand, where a person's looking back on their life and they're looking at this hard point in their life and they see only one set of footprints there, and their question is, God, where were you in the midst of this time? And in the poem, the answer is, that's the point where I carried you. Now, I know there are people who love that poem, and I know there are people who hate that poem. The people who don't like the poem say it's too sentimental or it glosses over the hard times. And the people who love the poem find a lot of comfort in it. I think the reason people don't like it is they get focused in on what we have the disciples saying in the gospel. Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Do you not care that we're going through a hard time? So, of course, Jesus gets up, says to the waters, peace, be still, and everything's good, right? And I think one of the questions we sometimes would ask is, but why doesn't God intercede early? Why doesn't God intercede sooner? And as I was thinking about this week, and again, I can only do things from my own perspectives, so you're going to get to know a little bit about me and how I think about this. But the more I've thought about this, the more I realize that sometimes it's those hard times that make the memories, that make us value things. So, earlier this year we had the freeze, and again, don't get me wrong, I was glad I had a house that I could stay indoors in. But I was also the crazy person who got all my, got geared up, and I went for like a 4-mile walk in it. Just because, again, it's just that, hey, let's experience this, let's enjoy this. We don't get this down here very often. And so, again, I was probably the only person out walking that day. And so you know a little bit about your pastor at this point, because those type of experiences mean something to me, and it helps me to remember it. And again, I'm the person who in the middle of summer goes out and takes a walk at 4 o'clock in the afternoon just so I can stay acclimated. It's part of something I do all throughout the year. It's like, hey, this is what it is. And I'm a firm believer that the hard times are the things that we remember. So have you ever been on a trip and it rained? And, you had all those people there, and so you couldn't go do all the things you planned to do, but then you sat and you had conversations, and you had to figure out other things to do, and you go back and you reflect on that trip. It's like, yeah, we didn't get to do this, but that was a great trip. Or I could think about when a couple cycles ago when we went to the National Youth Gathering in Detroit, and our plane got canceled. And then we finally get there. And the next night we're there, the fire alarm goes off in the middle of the night. And the next night the fire alarm goes off in the middle of the night. I finally have to explain to the hotel that yes, you're going to have to turn your AC down because of all these people coming in and out and letting the moisture in from outside. That's triggering your fire alarm. And it was a great trip. Even though we had to go and physically wake Adam up to say, Adam, the fire alarm's going out, everybody else is out of the hotel, you're the last person in here. It was a great trip. And I could go on to the countless other stories, whether it's from times in the Army or times doing things in ministry or times of trips I've been on in other places. And sometimes, so I remember a real brief story from the Army. So I went on a lot of runs in the Army. I only really remember one. And the reason I remember that one is they canceled workouts for that day. Or they said, everybody work out indoors. There's a storm coming. And me and this one other guy said, we're going to go for our run anyway. And so, again, we get about halfway out, and it's just starting to mist and everything, and then we get the full distance out, and that's when it really starts raining. So we come back and we have to brief our squadron commander after that because that was our job. And so we come back in and we're both dripping like wet cats. And I mean, he's just shaking his head. It's like, you guys are just fools. But we had a great time. You know, that was just, I remember that one. I don't remember any of the other ones, but I remember that one. You know, and even the things that we do, and I've been doing a lot of reading on like ritual and things like that. The things that we do that are kind of that waiting period before. You know, have you ever been to some place and you have to wait in line to get in? And then you actually go to the event and it was worth it? You know, yeah. I think most people know I was at a concert last weekend. Yeah, it was 95, 96 degrees outside. There was 110,000 people on the inside of the stadium. It took a long time to get out. It took a long time to get back to my car. It took a long time for my car to be able to get out of the parking lot. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. Totally worth it to be in 110,000 people singing together. Now, did I go there because there was going to be 110,000 people? No. I went there because I knew all the songs and I could sing all the music, and I just wanted to be able to sing it with other people. So we have our story where, again, Jesus has just been with people. And he's been healing people, he's been teaching, and he's probably worn out at this point. And the disciples are taking him away. And so, you know, they get him, they put him in the boat. And again, many of his disciples are fishermen. This is their element. They know this piece, right? You know, we should be able to handle whatever goes on the sea, right? And so they go and they drift away from land, and then the storm comes. And they do everything they can to deal with the storm. And then they wake Jesus up. Now, again, we could say, well, why is Jesus able to sleep through this in the first place? I don't know. Maybe the sound of the rain on the roof of the boat, maybe that was real peaceful. Maybe it was kind of that rocking to sleep. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they have to wake him up. I think the other piece, and this is one of the things that, and I've known this for a little while with the way Mark structures the story. So what comes after this is Jesus goes over to the other side of the lake of the Gerasenes, and he encounters the man possessed by Legion. And there's a lot of thought in the way in which this story is told, that this storm that comes out of nowhere, and again, people in Jesus' time would view this, is this storm demonic? Is this something that is trying to resist Jesus coming to the other side of the lake? And I do think that, you know, if we're going to be in the boat with Jesus, that means that sometimes we're going to be resistant. If we're going to be in the boat with Jesus, then sometimes we're going to encounter the forces that are there to resist Jesus. And there are going to be things that sometimes we can't deal with. Now, again, I stole this picture from an old map. Again, this is the old maps where you say, here lie monsters, or here's where the dragons are. You know, those parts where they didn't sail. But I do think that there are times where we encounter resistance precisely because of who we're trying to be in the boat with. And so they are in the boat with Jesus, and they've done everything they can. And then they go and they wake Jesus up. And Jesus says, peace, be still. And it's still. Now, I wonder if they had woken Jesus up earlier. If they had woken Jesus up when the storm started coming, would they remember this story? Or would they have just finally had to be at the point where it's like, we've done everything we can. There's nothing else we can do. Okay, now, God, help us. And I've certainly been in that situation where I don't know what the answer is. God, help me now, please. And again, I think that in those moments, we may ask the same question that the disciples asked. Do you not care that we're perishing? Do you not care what's going on in the midst of our life? Do you not care that this is happening? And sometimes it's finally when we are willing to ask that question that that's where we're carried through. That doesn't mean that we didn't get wet. It doesn't mean that we didn't go through hardship. It doesn't mean that we didn't suffer. It doesn't mean any of those things. But I do believe that even, and maybe especially in those hard times, that God is there with us. And that God is able to let us do what we need to be able to do. But I also believe that at those points, and I do believe there are those points where, in my life, at least, or at least for a couple steps, it wasn't my footprints. And I do believe that God cares that we are perishing, but I also believe that, and again, maybe this is because, so I moved my youngest up to Oklahoma yesterday. You know, part of the job of a dad is to help them be prepared for the world they're going to enter. And I do believe that part of that is also God equipping us to be able to do the things that we can do on our own. At the same point, being there when we encounter things that we cannot. And so I do believe that God does care about what we're going through. I do believe that God is active in the midst of our lives, but I also believe that there are those times where He may be there walking by our side, allowing us to do the things that we need to do. And there are also those times where there's only one set of footprints. And those footprints